Hello,
I
hello,
can't be
hello.
seated. I cannot be seated. I need to jump up and down.
That is a choice. And welcome everyone to
Welcome.
our episode for this week. But before we go into that, let me wish our Muslim viewers and listeners Eid Mubarak. I'm sure if you are still with family, enjoying the Shawwal for this year. May peace, calm, and happiness be your guide for this year. So everyone, welcome to Leadership in Flow. We are in season 3, and just for those of you who have joined us for the first time, what is Leadership in Flow? Leadership in Flow is our weekly live show that we get to speak to quiet leaders. And the quiet leaders we define as introspective, self-aware leaders who think about their personal growth constantly, because they're looking at developing not just themselves, but the team that they lead, the organization or the business that they lead. And it's for business results at the end of the day, because we hold certain roles for certain objectives and results to be met. Yeah. And Ashok, I, and Malar have been on the helm of the show since February 2022. So for today's guest, I'm going to pass on to Ashok to introduce us to Ivan. Yeah.
But why, Sham? You were doing a fantastic job. I was just enjoying the show, just watching you.
Well,
Okay.
we divide our duties, so it's your
Okay.
turn. Yes.
All right. Let me talk about the quiet leader that we are interviewing today. Right. This week's show. So Ivan Chin currently is the CEO of Extraordinary People. Is a social service agency in Singapore, or a charity organization, as the rest of the world might know it. So I've met Ivan some 20 odd years ago, and you'll notice later when he comes on, he has a very calm nature in him. When the whole world is falling apart, he's still like very calm, and the way he speaks, he's very confident, and he fits a bill of our quiet leader because he's always very introspective. At the same point of time, he focuses on nudging small behaviors and changes and shifts, and likewise even for his own life and for the people that he lead. And that's why we thought it would be very nice. We've been hearing a lot about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusivity, right, in the workspace and all. And who better than Ivan, who is leading a charity for DEI and also has been in that space for the last 20 odd years, right, for us to now quiz him and help decode what is inclusiveness in DEI. So with that, let's bring him on.
Okay, let me do that. Adding Ivan to the stage and changing perspectives, right? Hi, Ivan. Hello.
Hello, Germany. Hi,
Hi.
Ashok.
I'm
Hi, Ivan.
wondering, as I heard Ashok introduce you, I'm wondering if the calmness you had rubbed off on him, because 20 years, right? Or it was the other way around, or is it just kind of some form of osmosis? But then again, that's not the question that we're going to meet, right?
I think it's a two-way osmosis. Yeah.
Two-way osmosis. All
That's
the science students.
right. There we go.
Okay. All right. I tell you what, I'm just going to just lead in, since we are into the science subject of osmosis and combinations. And, Ivan, you have been the leadership position. I mean, currently as a CEO of Extraordinary People. But if you trace back your life, I know you've told me, you've been in many situations where you've held a lot of leadership positions, and you had a lot of insights and thoughts and all that. What the viewers would like to know, even myself, right? What are some of the important principles and values that you hold in your leadership journey?
Okay, so thanks, Ashok. Well, I think you're right to say that if you look at my whole journey in life, I've quite colorful. Been through different sectors of work and different kinds of domain areas which one may not venture into. So if you do have my LinkedIn, you probably understand why, viewers. I would hold two particular traits very important. I would say in keeping my path in terms of my professional career, the way I would like it to succeed. It is both integrity and professionalism. So these are actually very key values which I hold very, very close to my heart. My decision points in all my leadership roles are always based on this tool and other variable values.
When you mean integrity, I mean, if we all talk about that, but how has that been a decision factor for you? Because you said it is a decision factor, right? We
It
all
is. It
heard
is.
about it, but can you help share with us? I mean, how has that helped you make the right decisions?
Well, just hang on. I just look at the screen. It's a bit shifty. You okay?
I'm okay. It just seems like you're on a boat, but okay.
Yeah. All right.
Much
Well,
better
I
now.
would say, yeah, I would say maybe the reason why I use integrity and professionalism because I I tend to go into every organization with the view that I'm there to add value
Okay.
in a certain way. And if I reach a point where really, if I really cannot add further value, then of course my purpose in the organization would have been dissipated already. So it's
Mm.
integrity because I feel that if I'm not able to put value into a particular space and bring the best out of organization, then I think that's my job is probably done. And it's integrity because it's about holding to your values and seeing through the task at hand. And I do that because I know very well that I don't intend to stay in an organization for long for the sake of staying long. For
Okay,
the
that's nice.
purpose of my job, my role, and where my career actually extends itself.
Now, this is very interesting, Ivan, because the way you are talking about this, right? More often now we hear of people who join organizations, they are looking at, progressing themselves in the career path, they're looking at the titles that they want to achieve and all. But here you're saying when you come in, you're looking at, can I add value?
Yeah.
And you focus on adding value. And at the
Yeah.
at a point of time when you feel that you cannot add value anymore, then you're very clear. You got to move.
Yes. That's right.
So you see yourself as a very dispensable leader.
Yes. I would say
Yes.
I'm a dispensable leader, and I think the main purpose is also to groom the team beneath me to be able to do my job or at least
Ah.
better. And moving with that as a trust, because in my sector of work, it's very fluid and it moves very rapidly. Things change within 2 3 years very quickly. So if the team is not nimble enough to adjust to changes,
Mm.
and that's where my leadership comes in to be help them to be able to maneuver the undercurrents of the sector movements. And that's where I really, really want to add that value. And when the team has the capability of doing it, then I would say my job's done.
Wow. So what I'm
It's a very
hearing is two
cowboy
things.
view. That's a very cowboy view when you say, yeah,
No, but
you ride into town, there's a big rascal there, and then you get rid of the rascal, and then that's it, you're off into the sunset. So I'm a classic cowboy leader in that sense.
I don't know about that, but I like the fact that when you looked at it as a dispensable leader, the two things you're looking at. Number one is okay, you're here to add value, and it appears to me from day one you're already looking to build a team to even when you're not around.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's more like succession planning from the time that you start looking at it. You're already thinking from that angle, isn't it?
that's
So,
right.
so two things come up to my. Oh, sorry, that's my doggy still getting excited. So the two things that come up to my mind, right? Number one is when you said about your team, right? So I got two questions about your team. Number one is how do you energize your teams to be their best versions? Because you said you've got to help them be nimble, right? So how do you now energize them to be their best version?
How do I energize them? Well, it's a selection process where I recognize where my strengths and my weaknesses are. And a leadership role has always, you have to look at where you are right now. And you pick the team members that will best fill all those gaps and even better than that. So that's one very important thing. It's about the role, the fit, and of course the culture that they have to be in. Then the culture is very progressive. Uh, my leadership is really to point the direction of being progressively positive or positively progressive. Because we can't go into a negative space when you're dealing with social service work. We are not just an ordinary charity. We carry the name of extraordinary by virtue of the very fact that we want to go that extra mile. And I take that branding very seriously because I look at each individual candidate that comes into our organization as the potential of going that extra mile, or maybe 2-3 extra miles. So, and that's the energy I need to infuse in all the candidates that I meet. And I want to see in return that they are able to respond to that kind of energy levels. So it's about attracting the right energy by being the energy. Because if I'm going to be very tired and laid back and not so progressive, then I will be attracting the same people. So I need to walk the talk. And I think as leadership, even the next tier of leadership, we all have to walk the same talk, being progressive, being very positive, and very people oriented. We're in the business of serving people, and we have to be very people oriented. And the words, the communications that we choose has to be really tuned in to really be of service to the people. And that was my turning point 20 over years back when I decided to come into the people sector, where the bottom line is really about social service, being of service to society. And I take it very seriously with the branding that we have right now. So that's it. How to energize? I want them to be very extraordinary. They have to be extraordinary.
Right. Nice. Sham, I know you got some question, but let me just ask him that second question I needed to. So what I'm hearing is, I like the fact that you said that the bottom line of this business is about people, the service to the people, right?
That's right.
And the way you do that is to make sure everyone is people-oriented, they are positive, they're progressive. It sounds very daunting, Ivan.
It is.
There's a lot of things to be done. How do you do it? I mean, how do you look after yourself to be positive, to be progressive in that sense? Because it starts with you said, right? So
Yep.
what do you do to get your energy up so that you can be that transmitter of the right energy?
Right. So I feed on energy. I feed on positive energy. And like what you say, the calm demeanor that I so possess, as what you mentioned, cool, calm, and collected, it is actually a prerequisite to regenerate. That's how I go about regenerating my energy, is really to be myself, be centered, and be focused. And it's not meditation per se. I mean, there are many forms of meditation, but I think being true to yourself, to your center in terms of quietness, does give you that energy. And also surround yourself with the like-minded, positive people that are really also very equally as passionate with that same purpose of wanting to serve. So that really drives me as an energizing point.
Okay. Yeah, forgotten that I had muted myself. Yeah. I'm not going to go down the route of the next question because I think there are still a couple of things I want to dig into in terms of your answers for the first two questions that Ashok asked you, right? And the first one is to go back to where you said there are two elements that involve integrity. And I like the way you talked about value in terms of both adding value as well as holding on to values, right? And it gives you different perspectives of value, right? That's one. And the other thing that you talked about was professionalism, but we didn't really get into it. So can you help us break this down? When you said professionalism, it's a big word. What does that mean in your world? Can you break it down for us, please?
Okay, when I use professionalism, there's always the classic, I would say, description. Being professional is doing what market standard is all about, industry standard is all about, your code of conduct, which is very professional. That's what is prescribed. I go a bit further to say professionalism, meaning to say that if and all things fail, anything fails, there is always professionalism that push you through. If the situation is so bad that it cannot move in a certain direction, professionalism has to come into and push things through. Even if you don't like a situation being handed out to you, you still need to go back to the basis of being professional. So to put it very bluntly, whether you like it or not, can you still be professional? Right. So I think a lot of I would say communication mishaps, things go wrong, go south, is because of the lack of professionalism. the lack of professionalism, the lack of clear, concise communication. So you put everything aside, can you still be at least professional to get the job done? And if I were to go further between, people always ask me the classic question: what's the difference between a manager and a leader? Right? A manager takes things to do. Right? A leader does what it takes. So if you put that together, that's integrity and professionalism wound together for leadership.
For the leadership. If I were to decode a bit more in terms of your explanation of professionalism, what I hear is elements of perseverance. All right, it needs to be done. It needs to be done. We get it done. Right. So there's resilience and a very specific aspect of resilience being perseverance. It also tells me that it's focusing on the purpose and the reason why we are doing what we are doing. Right. Because pardon the language, shit happens, right? And when it does, it's then the true test of how committed are we to that purpose and to that role or the objective of what we're doing and what outcomes we're looking for. And the third element that I hear is also a little bit of, so I'm kind of thinking of this, and I'm not too sure, but I hear a little bit of autonomy, because you need to take it and move on with it, because things may not work as the way we are, but we can just drop it, or we're going to take it and take the autonomy and drive it. And autonomy on its own doesn't work so well if there's no collaboration as well, and pulling people along. So would that be a fair decode of what you've termed professionalism?
Yes, I mean, thanks for bringing that up. I think it has to be collaborative. It cannot be working in a vacuum system. It has to be professionalism that encircles the ecosystem of board members, stakeholders, even operational staff and everything. The whole ecosystem has to be in sync. So when I mentioned, it really cuts across. As much as a professional you are also very dependent on the ecosystem that supports that professionalism. So if you don't have a board that is professional, to say, then the work you're doing may not be relevant at the end of the day. So it has to be congruent throughout the whole system, not just the leadership of the CEO's position. It has to be a reflection of the board that the CEO serves and the staff that he manages, the whole system that is in play, right down to the client and caregivers. The more symbiotic it is, the more effective the whole system will work out.
It's very interesting. I mean, when I talk about how it is an ecosystem, they don't use that word, but talk about how the stakeholders are critical to the running of an organization, and we've got a broad stroke around what we mean by stakeholders, right? We know sometimes there is a board involved, but when it comes to the conversation that we're having right now, and the conversations that I have with Ashok around the work that he does with the National Cancer Society, Children's Cancer Society Foundation, and all the other work that he does, what jumps out at me is how that ecosystem in your world is so tied to each other, right? The link is so strong that the cause effect is almost immediate, right? We don't experience that, perhaps. We don't even see that sometimes with organizations that, the MNCs, the global MNCs. You don't see that ripple effect so quickly as I think we do in organizations like yours, right? So that's an interesting one, and I thought I'd like to share that. The second question I have is this. You said the sector movement is very quick, very fast, every 2-3 years, right? I wouldn't have placed that with a charity organization or a not-for-profit organization. Can you tell us a little bit more about what kinds of movement impact your ecosystem?
I would say it's very much related to policy shifts, policy movements, and how the sector moves in response to trending issues. The rapid side of it could be as fast as 2-3 years. Slow impact will be about 5 years and slightly above 5 years. It's moving very fast because things change. Because the government is responding faster to a lot of feedback from the ground. So it's also partly due to how the government responds. Its response to all this feedback in terms of shifting certain target or goalposts, because it's an adjustment towards getting things done right. So that also requires the whole industry to shift, whether nimble or not, towards that direction, and then focus in those sense. So in my sector, what really dictates this is how we have this enabling master plan that comes out every 5 years. That sets the tone or the playbook for all of us to work towards. And that's how the whole industry moves. Yeah. So it's about 5 years plan, but not every organization can respond very quickly to it. It takes about 2-3 years, and by the time new boards come, new boards go, a lot of things will change. So it's very people-oriented factors that will determine how an organization moves forward. So that's some of the variables that affect the rapid change within the sector.
Sector. Okay, thank you very much. Over to you, Ashok.
Thank you, ma'am. Since we're on the topic of charity, thanks for bringing that up, Sham. So the question I have for you, Ivan, right? Geez, you didn't have to come into this sector,
Yeah.
right? So what was the impetus, right, that
Yep.
drove you to the sector?
Well, that will unlock the history between us that you mentioned just now at the start, about 20 over years ago. Yeah. So long story short, I was actually in the private sector, and a good many years before, I was put in a position to really question what I was really doing at that time professionally, career-wise. So I was really in a space where I wanted to find myself, and I happened to chance upon a camp for children with special needs and terminal illness, chronic diseases, to add it all up. So that camp was very interesting because it really opened my eyes to true volunteering. I come from the age where volunteering wasn't a mainstay, and volunteering was actually very frowned upon at that time. You can go out with a can of, you go for sell flags, and then people will scold you, even tourists will scold you. And you get a lousy experience. They say, okay, that's it for me, no more volunteering. So, but that camp came along, and it really got me because I entered that camp at 30 years old, which means you can tell by the age factor right now. You open my eyes. I say, wow, this is a huge different paradigm for me. That what I do can actually impact people just through a camp. And I came back again for the second year and played a leadership role in that camp. And 2 years summed up my position to say that, I would say the people sector is where I belong because I feel most comfortable working with people and serving the cause for people, the social bottom line. And then it gravitated me towards wanting to work in the social sector and serving that social bottom line instead of a corporate bottom line, which we're all chasing in the private sector. So that was my shift. In year 2000, that's when I shifted into the social service sector with my eyes wide open and never looked back. And from then on, I've ventured into healthcare, even the home affairs. So very interesting, like I said, very colorful journey, which you don't have an hour or so, you can't really.
Sure.
But, so that was my shift. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for that because again, what I'm continuously hearing from you, right, is about the passion for the people sector and about the social bottom line, right? So you've been in this space for about 20 years, and now you're CEO of Extraordinary People. Now, in your opinion, having seen the last 20 years and the changes from 2020, right? What needs to change in this charity sector? And if I may like to divide this question into two parts, internally and from externally. What needs to change in the charity sector?
Well, I think in the whole scheme of things, the charity sector has moved, has grown quite well in that sense, progressively. So when you say charity sector, it cuts across all the social service sectors. So, but maybe if I were to come straight to the disability sector, which is where I am right now, which is a subsector of social service, because social service cuts across family, elderly, and whatnot. So probably my answer would be very focused on disability sector.
Mhm.
The sector has moved a lot, and generally, I would say a lot of charities are more professional now. The needle has shifted a lot in the past 20 years. Yes, you still have the struggles to fundraise and pushing for the philanthropic dollar and everything, and optimizing your operational resources and everything, all still very standard. The mindset has shifted. I would say that was the reason why I decided to come back into the disability sector, because it's a sector that really I feel needs the most help. It has progressed a lot. There are master plans in place, but it takes more than a master plan to move the whole sector. And it has moved a lot. By internal sense of it, most of the charities have really shifted, but may not be enough. So there's probably a lack of collaboration.
Mhm.
That's where the external part does really have to play a big role. Where the I would say corporates community must come together and work with the sector to really move further into that space. Generally, the whole awareness about disabilities and inclusion, or DEI per se, has moved somewhat, but I would say a lot more sharpshooting uh, to get things done right, to hit it on the right note. But in general, there is actually harmony going on. But I think we can still play better.
Okay, okay. I hear you, and I want to throw maybe a controversial question, or maybe just want to throw another scenario out there before we get into the DEI space, right? Sometimes when I speak to people,
Sure.
there's this impression. They say, oh, there's a mindset among the public, or the charity sector should not be paid much because they are here to do good for the society. But I feel that, hey, that doesn't make sense, because the charity sector also needs talent, you know, and there's inflationary issues, and we need
Yeah.
to pay well also. And I feel that's a mindset issue on the public, right? That also needs to shift. And on side, from the charity side, perhaps it's about looking deeper into their programs and coming up with proper impact assessments, to be able to balance that mindset. But what are your thoughts about, should charity sectors not be paid enough? You know, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, I think I do resonate with that statement very closely, because personally, I also, mm, I wouldn't say sacrifice, but I would say there is a uh, by choice. Okay, you come down to the ground, right? Especially where a charity is concerned, limited by resources and everything, but closer to the ground, closer to the passion, closer to the purpose. There's a trade-off. So in general, across the board, I would say professionals who move down to the charity sector, about 30-40%, you actually lose out with your contemporaries.
Mm,
And it comes at a cost, which is quite cute, because I always wonder and say, why am I doing this for this? But the how I reconcile is the kind of work I'm privileged to do. The people I work with, everybody all agrees that we can't get paid a lot. We just have passion that binds us together, purpose that binds us together, and it's the person or the children and the families that we're serving that really drives us. Now that is the qualifier as to is that worth the sacrifice. So I would say if you go down to speak to a lot of social service advocates like myself, a lot of us will still agree. But we are quietly and silently hoping that it's not the public sector that decides on the pay.
mm,
It's I would say holistically driven by market forces, and market by largely will be of course impacted by the government, uh, philanthropists, people who are willing to pay or donate more, and ensure that the machinery keeps going, and it will level up by itself. Because the work I do in a small charity versus the work a large charity does. It's the same. It's the same. It's just that we don't warrant the funding that a larger charity does. So there's a lot of disparity, and we hope that after a while, the balancing of the equalities will factor in slowly but surely. So there are actually recent announcements that they are trying to level up some social service sector job roles, trying to level up so to make it more competitive. So, but I think there's more to be done. The work is still the same. We're still changing lives. We're still
Yep.
impacting lives. So, what's the difference between doing this big charity or a small charity, or don't say the private sector? So we are in a people business. So technically, it should be equally recognized. A life
Right.
is a
Right.
life.
Yeah, correct. And I think that sometimes by not looking at it equitably, we may be shortchanging ourselves in terms of the type of resources. I don't want to use the word talent, the resources and skills that might be in a person who may have the passion at a certain level, but may not be able to make that jump from where they are currently because of life's needs, and where they are in their stage of life and the commitments and stuff that they have, right? And that's a waste. That's a loss on both sides, I think.
Mm, mm,
Yeah. So it's like, how do we find that equitability or equity in some way or form or the other?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and
So
and, and that could need a separate discussion all by itself in terms
it
of
is, it is, it is, it
yeah,
is, it is. If I
yeah,
may just add one point, I
sure.
think we're all here to stay. We're all here to
Mm,
stay, but until that point, until we say, I'm done. So we don't want to reach that point where it becomes a negative experience. It
correct.
should always finish off with a positive experience where I'm done. I've done my best. I've given lots of value. Comes back to my original intent in the first place, is
Yeah.
that I've done my best in my integrity, and professionalism has brought me there, and that's the best value I could do, and I'm happy with it. So we don't want people to say that, oh, this is ridiculous. I can't take it anymore. The
Mm,
burnout and everything, it doesn't make sense anymore.
yep.
We don't want to go there. We want to keep
Correct.
good people. We want to make sure that they enjoy what they're doing. They continue serving, less fortunate,
Mm,
in terms of finding their own niches in life, and enjoy life per se for the rest of it.
mm. Very nice. I think it's good. It's a good time for us because I brought in the word equity to segue into the conversation around the concept of DEI, right?
Mhm.
And let's get started with the things that we don't get right first. So, what from your perspective, working with various organizations, big, small, medium, and all the different sizes in between, what do we tend to get wrong about DEI?
Well, I'm no guru in DEI, but I think based on I would say my point of view,
Mm,
I don't think everybody is. There's no right or wrong about DEI. It is how do you interpret DEI, and how you want to implement it in an organization that uh, professes to be DEI centric.
mm,
So in my space, I just drill it down to disability inclusion, focusing it on disability and inclusion,
mm,
which is really my side of the house. Well, I
yeah.
think the largest space of DEI is diversity, which actually goes beyond this disability.
Mm,
It can even cut across gender. It can go into various other areas, topics which an organization wants to champion. So it
mm,
goes back to what are the organization objectives in wanting to go the DEI way, or for that matter, ESG. So it's the same conversation but different slant,
mm,
right? So it really depends on what are you looking for. So I always ask the question why, and what do you hope
mm,
to achieve from being DEI friendly or centric. So if you get the why, what's, and the how in terms of executing it, then I think it's clear. I I rarely find interesting DEI concepts. It's very much annual report centric. It's very
mm,
very much a KPI-driven agenda, and I don't have much opportunity to work with organizations to see the whole spiel of activities that support DEI and the culture it represents of the organization. So either DEI or ESG represents the organization, or the organization represents those. So it has to be very congruent. So if I don't feel it in the activities, I won't feel it from the organization. Likewise, if I don't feel it from the organization, I won't feel it in the DI activities. So a lot of all these activities are job roles. And if it's organization culture that says, oh, this is part of your job, or is it a CCA, defines the outcome of a good DI program, defines a good ESG program, because it's work related. So it comes back to, is it part of work or is it part of purpose? That when you work in an organization, it's not because it's a CCA that I'm going to do this, or because it's part of my work. So if it's part of my work and I live it and breathe it, then the DEI will work. Not because CCA. Yeah. It doesn't count.
Yeah. It doesn't count to your overall score, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm just going to be a bit obtuse here and ask you to give me a little bit more clarity around when you say when I don't feel it from the organization, or I don't feel it from the people. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that? What do you mean when I don't feel it?
Well, I'm a people person. I am very receptive to energy and personalities. So when you walk into an organization, for instance, who lives and breathes CSR like it's like bread and butter, it tells, it shows. It shows in their handshake, it shows in their mannerism, it shows in the way they welcome you. You know, when they say, oh, you're a charity, oh, great, come in and hey, let's really want to do something about it. Not because you have to, but because it is naturally in you that you want to engage a charity. I can feel it. Yeah, I think anyone can feel it. So it's warm, it's not as cold and distant. So it's warm and close. It is inviting. And the more inviting it is, there are a lot more possibilities can happen. So we've got a lot of very we've got a lot of old partners that disappeared before COVID and they came back. And we could still feel that warmth. Yeah. So this is exactly what I'm trying to say. So be it DEI, ESG, or even our terminology of disability inclusion, it is very telling in the culture, not just HR or just CSR committee.
Wow. Okay. I like that, Ivan. I really like that. You said because you take the energy pulse, right? So you can feel from the handshake itself whether people are really energized, whether they are really sincere about CSR and all. And recently I heard what I felt was a pretty nice mindset or an approach to DI from this gentleman. He gave a talk. His name is Emery Fung. He's from Hong Kong, right? And he talked the way he broke down DEI. He said, D, diversity, is a fact. E, equity, is a system. And I, inclusiveness, is a practice. And I think what you are telling us now is the I, the practice that you try and get a sense of, because if it's part of the practice, the culture, it shows up. The way they are warm to you, or are they just approaching CSR from a tick box event, right? Right. Do you have any specific examples of how do they need to think to get it right? What needs to shift to get it right for the ones? I mean, without naming anyone, right? But what needs to shift to get it right?
I think you've got it pinned down quite nicely about being fact, being system, being a system, and being a practice. So if you look at a fact, means what is your cause? I would say I'll break it down further. The fact is actually what are you really fighting for?
Okay.
Right? Okay. And is your system or your ecosystem ready for it? Okay. And then that's the system part, right? And then practice. How are you going to get it done? So basically, these are the three things that has to click nicely. And the organization has to come and grapple with the fact that who is going to get it done? Is it only the people on the ground, people in senior management or HR or CSR organization, or it includes the CEO, CFO? So it really trickles down from top down and bottom up. So I always tell when I do consult with organizations, I say, if it's top down, it may not work. If it's bottom up, you'll probably get flattened out somewhere. But if it comes from the top and comes up from the bottom, it will meet somewhere. And where it meets, magic happens. So long as both top and bottom continues working towards an equilibrium. So the whole organization will shift in that particular, in that direction of being very into the practice, fulfilling the system, putting a system in place, and going for that cause, which is the fact that you mentioned just now. So I think Emery was brilliant to give you those thumbnails to work on.
And I like the fact that you said, I know, I thought when you said, oh, if it comes from the top, I thought you were going to say it's going to work well. Then you said, no, it won't. And
No, it will trickle off. I can tell you a lot of organizations, it comes from the top, but it doesn't, there's no buy-in. It has to have buy-in from almost every level for an organization to work in a certain direction. So that's where the belief system comes in. Whether do you believe in it? It's not just the CEO saying, okay, we're going to do this, okay, but he has to sell it. He has to sell it and convince the people that the drivers that is needed to make this happen. So that's where we put it very, very bluntly. DEI is like a team building exercise. You get it right, your team building will be right.
It's a team building exercise.
Yes. We always say that. In fact, part of our disability and inclusion offering as consultants, we actually go in and help to do team building by using disability and inclusion as the agenda. At the same time, raising awareness about disability and inclusion and getting to know themselves better.
Okay, I like this idea. I'm now piqued, interested. Tell me a little bit more. Exactly. I mean, do you have an example of some things that you do or are doing? I don't know. If you can share.
We are doing that. So we have a lot of corporate interests that do come in once in a while, and they come in on a very, very light CSR agenda, just fulfilling the checkbox Shamini was telling you about.
Okay.
Tick. But then and then what? So what we'll do is we upsell our French fries to go with that. So what I'll do is disability inclusion. Hey, do you guys understand what disability inclusion is in the first place? So they're actually quite low in terms of understanding, and then we're there to offer it to them. And they say, great, then we go in, we engage, and then at the same time, they understand the disability sector better. They get to know my organization better.
Okay.
And then what's next is, what else can we do together? So with that revelation and understanding, then we get to know each other better, and we can help each other in our own areas of need. For us, we need more corporate support, more volunteers, more fundraising opportunities. For them, they want to fulfill that CSR or DEI fulfillment. At the same time, engage their staff meaningfully and purposefully. So everybody wins. Whether they want to go further into the inclusion journey, we are there as a charity that is really, really ingrained by the fact that we want to do more advocacy work, because we can't just walk the talk. We need to talk the walk so that it meets right in the center.
Okay. Is there anything specific that you're working on now to help shift corporates' mindset and practice?
Yes. So I would like to name an organization which I would say is amazing. Ernst & Young, EY Singapore. We've actually been working. I know them before because I've seen how they've done inclusive hiring in their own organization. And they actually have been donating money towards causes and everything. Until recently, I convinced them and say, hey, would you be open to putting that money into making magic happen? So when I said magic, I described the whole camp experience. I showed, where I'm coming from. It is about camp. It's creating a camp for people with disability, and it's going to be organized by people with disability. And EY is making it happen. And other than funding it, as a main sponsor, they're also putting a lot of weight behind it, getting their own staff to be volunteers, and they're doing more education programs within the organization about the work we do and what more we can do together. So that's the really the breaking of the ice in terms of what inclusion is all about. It's not just about giving money, right? It's not just about funding. It's really walking the talk with
Right.
us. Yeah.
Nice. Yes, Sham, you look very curious. You are ready to pounce on a question.
And, yeah, I have a question. I kind of pinged it there in the
Ding, ding,
invite.
ding.
And this is what caught my ear earlier on when you said it comes down from the top and then it kind of like dies on its own, and that kind of a natural death, right? And when Ashok probed a little bit more, you said the CEO doesn't sell it well, and that perked my ears because of the work that I do in the leadership communication space, right? And it's usually the other way around. You're teaching, you're working with the team here, trying to make the sale or to sell the idea upwards, right? And you're looking at all the components that you need to influence, you need to think about them from their perspective and so forth. When you say the CEO doesn't sell it well, what's happening there? What is it that they are doing that bombs it, or they're not doing and it just flatten out, dies a natural death kind of a thing?
Well, I would say the level of conviction, manner of communication, and why is it so important? So it's very systematic in that sense, that if it's from the CEO's perspective, he has to sell it not just below, but he also needs to get board approval. The board has to buy it. Okay, it also depends on what kind of organization that is, local MNC or SME. So it really depends. What is above him? What is below him? So if he wants to do DEI or disability inclusion, it really depends on the question of why. Why are we doing this? Not just because he wants to do it. If he wants to do it, then he has to sell it very hard. Because it's the in thing to do, or because there's an award that they want to go and get it done. Or is it from MNC? This came from HA quarters in America. Then we've got to do it in Asia Pacific. So we've got no choice but to move this thing forward. So whether the conviction is there in the first place. So actually, this one really depends on I would say, the profile of that organization CEO, the board, the people that he has to report to above him, and then trickle downwards whether the organization is ready to take this on. So it's like a war. For instance, it's like a war. It's like a battle. You want to charge in a certain direction. There's a reason why you need to charge in a certain direction. You need to rally the number of troops that you need to put the energy behind it and force through and get it done. So it's really dependent on the CEO to push things through, communicate well, and why this is important enough for the whole organization to move. Okay, so that's the paradigm from the CEO's point of view. But then again, there are also organizations where it's driven from bottom up, ground up, where the evidence is gotten from the ground and then it trickles up. And when I use the explanation of the CEO coming downwards and bottom up, then it is, I would say, evidence-based that the top can see it and the bottom can see it. And it's working towards a middle ground. You see? And then that's where it happens. Then you will see the organization moving in this direction. So a lot of organizations do not succeed as an organization. They can even exceed as a department of an organization that is inclusive in the first place. Yeah. And of course, they'll reap the laurels of this particular department. But the department does not exist alone. It is representative of the organization. So everybody gets into the action somehow or other. And then it rubs off on each other. And that's how the culture, the viral effect must happen. That this viral effect of inclusion and disability inclusion has to come from somewhere, and somebody has to keep it going. Right? So like I use COVID as an example, you see. how it started and how it ends is dependent on how the spread goes and what you do to prevent it, right? So you use reverse engineering. That's how inclusion and disability should be transmitted throughout the whole world by spreading it, educating and involving people. So this is I would say I will use this as a metaphor. It is a very good virus that we need, which is disability inclusion.
Yes, it is. It is a very good virus. Um, and this is coming from a place that's partly cheeky and also partly because sometimes we have I overhear people saying this statement. It's a biased statement, right? The only reason, and sometimes there is a cause effect. So what am I saying? The only reason the organization is doing this or X is doing this, as in a person is doing this, is because they have personal experience with that disability. That's why they're pursuing this. That's why they're pushing it, right? Now, when you said earlier on, the CEO must really believe in it to push it on. There's nothing stronger than when you have someone in your family who's like that, and therefore that drives your purpose, right? You suddenly have your eyes open. Is that enough? Is that enough to make things happen?
Yes, I think if there's conviction, the volition sets in, and I think it'll be on its own way. I don't have to have a child personally with special needs or disability to understand, because I'm a very empathetic person. One of the reasons why I came into the sector was because I was utterly empathetic towards the cause. And my interactions with children with special needs, with disability, refuse my conviction. I have friends who are people with disabilities going through their lives, and I can just imagine how difficult it can be. And even close friends whose children will have got special needs kids, they're going through with those struggles, and they can't do it alone. And you can't depend on parents with disability, with disabled kids or with special needs to make a difference. It requires more people like myself who are not in the game, do have skin in the game, to have that skin in the game. You know what I mean? And that's the reason why if I can do this little to impact a lot, I mean, it's just little thing I can do and leave this place a better place when I found it. So I think that's the differentiator between having skin in the game and having skin in the game, where it's not just for the sake of it, but it's really what are we set up to do. I mean, I'm at my stage in life right now where I can take on different challenges compared to 10, 20 years ago. And now that I've decided to come back into the social service sector and disability sector, I am giving my best to see what I can do. I think that's exactly what I mean by having skin in the game. Hey man, I mean this is as real as it can get.
All right. Thank you for that, Ivan. So, talking about skin in the game, right? So, I like the fact that when an organization comes to you, regardless of whether it's a tick box event or whatever, right, you do a bit of an upsell by educating them, involving
Yes,
them,
yes,
and shifting their experience. And
yes.
one of the things that you just talked about was, interestingly, you are also driving a camp for people with disability, but run by people with disability,
That's right.
right? And that's going to be a fantastic, great experience. Now, tell us a little bit more about share with us some organizations who have got skin in the game, who take on a very human-centric design in their product and service offerings.
Well, I think there are many organizations like this, but maybe I'll just do a very sweeping observation, just to give some credit to the transport system. I would say the transport system may not have a lot of skin in the game, but because they are running what is this necessity in Singapore, good transportation, I think they've come a long way in making our transport system, I would say, first class. And when I say first class, I mean to say that people with disabilities are finding it much better to move around in terms of independent travel using the system. And I invite people to take buses, invite people to take the trains, just look at what they're doing. So I would say people centric, I would say the transport system has done a fantastic job. All of them. Um SMRT, SPS, even Tower Transit. Yeah. They're doing a great job. They're also doing a lot of education at the same time. So they're doing their part to walk the talk and talking the walk in terms of making disability accessibility very, very much a mainstay in their work. So I would say this would be the big group I would want to look at. Smaller groups will definitely be, of course, organizations will become very inclusive hirers, continue to do that job. Like Pan Pacific Hotel, they're doing a fantastic job. They hire about 30 over. They're quite quiet about it in terms of 30 over persons with disabilities.
Oh, really? Didn't know
Very
that.
exactly. So these are the people making it not just, I would say, inclusive, but they have created more opportunities for them to live more independent lives. I think that's the most important thing that we can actually do to help people who are disadvantaged and with special needs to have that leg up in life. So I think these are some of the lighter mentions, and more than happy to have another session with you to share a bit more if given the opportunity.
Now I need to go to Pen Pack. I didn't know about that, Sham.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
If you go to Sichuan Douhua, they have two very interesting staff there. They've been there for many years and done a fantastic job.
Could you very quickly rattle off, aside from PenPack, what are the other organizations that have been doing some wonderful work? Like just a few numbers. So it's quite interesting, right? Like we don't know, and then now we can pay attention to it.
Off my head, let me think. I think in the area of inclusive hiring, a lot has been done. I would say people like Inclus is a social enterprise. They've done a fantastic job doing training and placement support for persons with disability. So these are the people who don't have enough accolades. People like Forward Coffee, School of Coffee, who are creating a lot more opportunities through training. Of course, I would say there's a whole string of people, but it's going to do injustice to list a few. But I think the idea, there are many heroes out there, but they just don't get the fair mention. And even they do, it's probably in different quarters. So I would say, yeah, even government agencies, some of them are doing pretty well in creating more opportunities for persons with disabilities. So I think as a whole, Singapore is doing pretty well, but I think more can be done, and we just hope that everybody can collaborate more and do away with isolation. Just don't get isolated from the whole scheme of things that's happening out there. We need to work together and optimize the resources that are really so limited, and really bring that value up for each family being served. So yeah, I think that's probably what my take would be.
I think there's one thing that needs to change at Sham. It's maybe organizations need to start shouting loud about what are the things that they do, so can inspire more people. Yes, Sham, you're going to ask the last question.
No. Yeah, that might be. I think it's sometimes, it's very funny. It's when we do the good that we don't talk about it. The good that really is, really far-reaching. We become very shy about it, and yet at the same time, the things that we think. We place different importance in things that are important, I suppose. So it really is interesting to see how organizations shout about some things and then don't shout about some other things that we think are, wonderful things that they should do.
Right.
So on that note, as Ashok said, we've come to the last bit of the episode, and this is when we ask you the 1 minute question, Ivan. And the 1 minute question is this, which we both of us going to shut up and not ask you any other follow up questions, right? And it'll be very nicely to the close of the show. And this is coming back to the individual. What can each of us on our own right, opening up all our senses, what can each of us do to get DEI right in the little things that we do every day?
Long and short, BDEI. So we don't really need to look at how to get it right or anything, but it just be the representation of what DEI is all about. It's like being positive. So there's no right or wrong about being positive. It's just being positive sets you on the right path. So if I use the same segue back to DEI, just be DEI. When you are DEI, you don't have to worry about whether it's right or not, because you will definitely be driven by the value. That means you turn DEI into a value. It's the same as what I mentioned about integrity and professionalism. Turn it into a value system, that you are looking at this diversity as a value, that you have a system in place, which is what you mentioned just now, equity, and how your inclusion, which is the practice, goes about doing it. So it is all about turning it into a way of life. Then you don't have to worry about whether is it right or wrong.
Very nice.
Nice.
Thank you, Ivan G, of Extraordinary People, for giving us an extraordinary 1 hour, sharing about inclusiveness with us as well as our viewers. Ashok, anything you like?
No, that's it. Thank you very much, Ivan. You've really helped us. You gave a clarity about why we need to have a clarity of DEI in the first place. Be very clear about your purpose. And then when you get the system right, be very clear about how you execute it from the top and from the bottom, so that they all meet at the right place and find the right equilibrium. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, and for giving us the clarity about making that connection. We're gonna move you backstage, but before we do, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us or say before we do that?
Well, nothing much. Just go and be extraordinary yourselves.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so on that note, Ashok, we have come to the end of this week's episode.
Yes.
It was a very, to me, it was an interesting way of decoding the I in DEI, and also decoding how to think about it maybe from slightly different perspectives. I like the fact system coding that was given. I think that helps me. That's my takeaway from today. And for you?
For me, it was a clarity about being a dispensable leader. Hold on to that value in that sense. Always add value, and don't be afraid. If you're done with your time, just move on. And the way you approach DEI is just be DEI. There's no right or wrong. Just adopt the value of DEI from the word go.
Yep. Okay. Very good. So that's it. Once again, Eid Mubarak to all our Muslim friends. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who have joined us today, thank you for joining us for today's episode. You know where we will be 1 week from now, back right here, same time, same place, with another guest, and we're going to explore another topic, the topic that matters for us in 2024. Right. On that note, good evening, everyone. Ashok.
Good evening, everybody, and